Welcome. My name is Troy Marcus, and we are excited to host you for another episode of YPO Presents. I'm dialing in from Austin, Texas, where I serve as president of MIMCO, the largest Hispanic-focused shopping center owner in the U.S. I've been a YPO member for over 8 years and am the current chair of YPO's Real Estate Industry Network. The Real Estate Network is comprised of over 5,000 members across the globe, and its mission is to deliver impactful experiences, helping members innovate and create the future of real estate. We're committed to providing perspectives, insights, and connections that will allow our members to remain at the forefront of global industry and economic trends. We're excited to welcome two global real estate leaders for this conversation today, Hugh Craigie and Anil Taneja. We'll be discussing trends, innovations, and predictions for our industry. Hugh is the managing director of the CHAP Group, one of Scotland's leading privately owned construction companies. In addition to its regional construction business, CHAP manages quarries, civil engineering, and residential development divisions. Anil is managing director at Palm Holdings, where he manages the strategic direction of the company's management services division, Palm Hospitality, and its construction division, Palm Construction. Palm Holdings' portfolio has more than 3,000 hotel rooms spanning across Canada, the US, and the United Kingdom. Welcome, Hugh, and welcome, Anil.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having us.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Before we get started, we'd like to remind all of you watching live to ask our guests questions by posting them in the comment sections below. And if you're not following us already, please do so you can receive a notification when our next episode begins. Jumping right in, gentlemen. The pandemic has disrupted all industries, and real estate is certainly no exception. With lockdowns emptying office spaces, urban dwellers seeking out lower density suburbs, and brick and mortar retail trying to stay afloat. What have been your biggest challenges, and how has your business adapted? Hugh, we may start with you.
Well, our biggest challenge started when the UK locked down for about 3 months in late March last year. So for 3 months, we had to close our business entirely. So that was fundamentally, obviously, the biggest impact. Since we returned in June, we've faced issues with getting labor, material resources, and just dealing with the extra burden of restrictions in terms of social distancing, wearing face masks, additional cleaning, etc. But to a large extent, we've adapted to that very quickly, and the teams have got used to that. And so that's become the sort of the norm these days. However, on our house building side and our commercial development side, that there's simply not been the same demand that there was prior to the pandemic. And that's clearly had a dramatic effect on our revenue stream and has caused us, a number of issues, as you can imagine. So that's been tough, but we are beginning to see that improve, and hopefully with the ongoing vaccination program in the UK, the numbers of cases are dropping, and we're beginning to look forward and look forward to escaping some of these restrictions and hopefully see some kind of return to normality.
Absolutely. And as a follow-on question, Hugh, as you're coming in from the UK, can you talk us through some of the supply chain issues that COVID has caused, material pricing through the roof, labor issues, and then, of course, how has Brexit exacerbated this?
Well, Brexit and COVID have very much overlapped, and it's quite difficult to separate the impact of one over the other. We certainly faced, or were very concerned about Brexit. The lack of a deal, the lack of any clarity on where we were going was very worrying. However, the reality of it has been really seen the same impact that I think was feared. And I believe certainly that the bigger effect on us is linked to COVID, not to Brexit. However, we are seeing significant price increases in materials. Timber in particular has risen significantly, but we're also seeing severe pricing fluctuations. So it's very difficult to price longer term work or projects when your suppliers aren't willing to commit to prices beyond a few weeks, never mind a few months. So there's different levels to it, but it's not been easy. On the labour front, I don't think we've seen any impact from Brexit thus far. Partly perhaps because the demand for labour has been reduced because of COVID. So we've not been looking for additional staff, and that'll be more telling as we come out of the pandemic and start to seek additional people. We're also further north, being up in the northeast of Scotland, so potentially we won't be affected as badly as the England and the south coast.
Absolutely. And then Anil, what about you? The hospitality world has been rocked. Not only business travel has stopped, but vacations have been put to a standstill. Can you talk us through what the pandemic has done to your industry and how you see things playing out?
Sure. I mean, our industry is fairly obvious. The hotel, this is the black swan event for the hotel business. Our biggest challenge is quite simply being to create demand and make people that want to travel safe, make people that want to travel, at least make them feel safe while they're doing that. It's been a real challenge when the world isn't letting you out of the house and the media has cast just a total negative picture on holidays and vacations and corporate travel. It's been easier in places like the US, which have been more open to business. And, we've seen sort of the extreme where, last weekend, for example, we were able to sell out in certain cities like Naples or Orlando. And then on the other side in Quebec and Canada, they've got an 8 p.m. curfew where no one's allowed out of the house. But yet we're still trying to keep a hotel open and keep guests coming in. So it's certainly been a challenge.
Absolutely. And so what have you done to stay in business at a time when no one is traveling?
Yeah, so stay positive is definitely one big part of it, but strong management in hotels makes a huge difference. Hotels are really an operating business backed by real estate, and the more hands-on in this type of environment, has really made a difference. So we're a creative group. We converted a hotel to a hospital. We converted one to a homeless shelter. We built mobile kitchens to get quarantine business. Our kitchens in the actual hotels and our restaurants turned into ghost kitchens in order to capture the rising demand from food ordering and Uber Eats and all that stuff. Our team's approach was, if there is demand and we can be it using our real estate, let's become it, and then let's figure out how to be the best at it after.
Absolutely. And playing off of that, when hotels do come back, how will they look differently going forward?
I'm a believer that when borders open, people will cross. I can't find anybody that's not itching to go on a trip. Saving rates have increased. Disposable cash is going to go into getting as far away of these prisons that we were locked into in our homes. We're going to see domestic leisure travel come back first because plane routes need to still open up. People got to get comfortable with the concept of planes. And then we'll see international corporate travel taking its times. I think tomorrow's customers are really going to want safety and security with the hotel they're booking. I think brands like Marriott and Hilton give that reassurance and an expectation of a trusted standard. But then again, the media has not painted hotels in the greatest light during the pandemic. We have to build back customers' trust. Those that will build back the trust will win, and those that don't will lose. Your reviews online, your digital marketing, they become so important because so many hotels have let service fall. It's critical that when they turn up, they feel the integrity of what they've seen online, and they get comfortable with their stay, and then they'll keep coming back and they'll stay for longer.
Absolutely. Which leads into the next question, which there are certainly pandemic trends that have impacted real estate in the short term, but will likely revert back to what was normal in the past. But which changes in consumer patterns are here to stay? And as business leaders, how do you shift your business focus accordingly? And Hugh, I may lean on you to jump on this.
Well, I think there was clearly a move towards online retail shopping prior to the pandemic, but that transition has accelerated significantly over the course of the last few months. And there'll be an element of going back. There'll be that want to go back and feel in touch and see these products, but that transition is never going to fully reverse. So the high street, as we call it in the UK, or the main street in the States, it's going to suffer, and equally the out of town shopping malls are going to have to face a new reality, and that's going to be challenging for that sector. And I think home working is going to have a big impact on the commercial space. Clearly, there's a vast majority of us have spent more time at home in the last 12 months working from home than ever before. I think, however, there is a huge, certainly for myself, I can't wait to be able to come back and interact personally with people rather than doing it via Teams or Zoom. But some sectors, the professional services industry, have seen higher productivity in the last 12 months than they've ever done before. So there's going to be some resistance from individuals, some resistance from business to go back completely. So office space and demand for that is going to be, I would suggest, less than it has been in the past, and it's going to have to be more flexible.
Absolutely. And Anil, how are you thinking about this?
Yeah, so a lot of the spoken about trends of home working and and really being closer to the house are we expect to benefit hotels. That means people are going to travel to the office there one day a week instead of having a place in the city. They'll need a hotel. People are going to want to go on vacations because we still have that inherent need to go out, network, and see new things. It seems like this is going to exaggerate that need, and they're going to want to be further away from home. So we're quite optimistic about the changes associated with travel. Where I do see some things changing is our industry, and many industries have gone to the concept of, micro rooms have gotten smaller, condos have gotten smaller, offices have gotten smaller. I do think people have gotten comfortable with the idea of more personal space now. So we look at, our building and say the rooms that are smaller, how can we make them more effective? Because people are going to want that feeling of space. Now, if the tight space is part of an organization's culture, I think it will continue to succeed. But if it's been part of their cost-saving measures, I think they'll have to take a hard look in whatever real estate that they've got and say, how can we make people have more personal space in this area?
Certainly. Thank you for that. Hugh, I'm interested. There's certainly been a global focus on sustainability now, with investors really wanting to invest in businesses with purpose and those that take ESG goals into account. How is the real estate industry and construction industry taking this into? How are you responding to this?
Well, from an environmental perspective, we are seeing customers demanding properties that are more environmentally friendly, and that has had a bearing on the type of properties and the specification of properties that we build. However, I think a bigger factor in that really is the rising level of building standards that we're expected to build to in the UK. If you went back 20 years ago, there were businesses that were promoting themselves as higher, more energy efficient and so on. It's actually getting quite difficult to differentiate yourself nowadays in the UK for some of these things because the minimum level is so high. So that has happened already and will continue to be important. I think looking forward, what may be more interesting is how community living changes. I think people will want to stay away from having a reliance on the car and be keener to live in smaller communities and be able to work from home, walk to the shop, and not have a very expensive luxury item sitting on their drive, not moving very often. So that'll be an interesting development to watch over the coming months and years. We're beginning to see signs of it. However, our planning restrictions and process in the UK and the land ownership factor will make that difficult, but somebody will solve that and they will get an advantage.
Absolutely. And to lean in on that, we keep reading and hearing about so many technological innovations happening in real estate. whether it's smart home connectivity or the need for more agile industrial fulfillment systems or environmental health measures. What are you seeing the end user really focus on, and in turn, where are the developers having to spend time and money to invest in?
Well, the automation is a part in this. The construction industry has been slow, a slow adopter of that. That will come. But in terms of stock management, automation is seeing less reliance on forklift-driven fulfillment, and seeing more automated systems, which are allowing warehouses to be built to with higher roof levels, which means they obviously need less space. So there's innovations like that which are changing all the time, and that will have a bearing on demand for property and types of property. So what used to be a high level roof warehouse nowadays is not high enough. So the stock that exists is at times less desirable than it may have been in the recent past.
Absolutely. And Anil, what are you seeing?
Hotels have always struggled to keep up. If I talk about the question from a technological perspective, hotels have always struggled because we've got two types of customers. One that likes to go to the check-in desk and find out where the front desk agents lived and what they're up to in life and what's in the local community. And then behind them, you've got somebody who keeps checking their watch. It just wants to get their room and go to their room and go to sleep and get out of the hotel the next day. So we've always had a challenge in managing guest expectations with technology. But I think we're going to see a larger group of people that want less interaction from people, but still expect a very high level of service. So, we've seen a big move on hotel rooms of people going to the brand apps or a hotel app, where they can actually check in on the app, get their key card, walk up to the room, flash their phone in front of it, and be able to get their room and then leave. Certainly that poses its fair level of security issues that we need to manage. But we're going to see more and more of that, of less interaction at the hotels. The challenge that we have in hotels, and why we haven't gotten to that point already, and why we're not as advanced as your home today, is the cost. Is it's become very quick. The smart home environment has been very quick and very cheap to come about. We've not been able to see labor reductions because of our two types of customers. I think as this independent world has transitioned to people doing more things themselves and less personal interaction, I think as an industry, we're really going to have to step up our game and be as advanced as your home, including the speed of the internet, ordering food from Uber Eats from your hotel app and servicing an Uber Eats customer versus not really liking it and resenting it and trying to push our room service. I think those are some of the changes that are going to be happening in the smart world of hotels.
Absolutely. Well, I'm not sure if it's that my questions are too boring or everyone's just excited, but the feed is getting blown up by questions on Twitter and LinkedIn, which is awesome. And so I want to double down on that. We have Carrie from Twitter asking, is there a trend of repurposing hotel space? Is that a long-term trend, to your point of ghost kitchens? And then I may double down on that because we have Angela on LinkedIn asking, how will the cleaning robots affect hotels as it relates to staffing and budgeting?
Yeah, absolutely. So we talk about the ghost kitchen concept first. I absolutely think so, but only for those that do it right. I think if you can do it right and you can do it effective, the concept of ghost kitchens will work for hotels. As hotels, we've always had a captive audience, and we do well with our captive audience. We do extremely well in breakfast because families want to come down and not go through the hassle of going to a restaurant and starting their day that way. They've got something else to do. That's why they're in town. And we can capture pilots and aircrew that don't want to leave the hotel room, or people that are tired, corporate that's tired, that wants to have a drink in the bar at night. We've really struggled, and we've been ineffective of bringing people from outside the hotel to come and eat and drink with us. Nobody wants to say, "Hey guys, we're going for dinner at the Marriott." It's not been a common thing, especially in North America, unless the hotel's been restaurant forward, which is quite rare in the overall business. So this has been a way that we can now attract. We've got to change the way we think. We don't need to attract an outside audience. We just need to sell to the outside audience. And if we can use our infrastructure and our real estate to have to be able to sell Cheesecake Factory desserts on Uber Eats, your customers going to Uber Eats, they're ordering from what they perceive as a Cheesecake Factory, and they're getting that dessert delivered to their home. All we are is the real estate behind it. So I think it's going to stay. Our labor costs are the same. We don't need to listen. If we have to add in our kitchen, that's a good problem to have. But for the majority, our labor costs don't really change. So we should be able to do this cheaper than somebody else setting up their own business. If I go into the cleaning robots question, we've not been able to effectively work with cleaning robots just because of the standards in hotels are so high. So far we've seen amazing robot vacuums coming out, but we've not been able to disinfect. We've not been able to do so many more things that are wash, take the dishes to the dishwasher. So we're still going to need the labor. In my opinion, I don't see this being a huge trend, at least in the immediate term, especially because the most important thing coming out of this pandemic is our cleanliness standards in a hotel room. People are going to be worried about cleanliness standards and all the costs that many hotels have taken back. We need to deliver on that service promise. Our hotel rooms have to be cleaner than they've ever been. And in my mind, if we are to incorporate technology such as that, we need to do that on top of what we have, not as a supplement.
Certainly. And then Hugh, a few questions on the construction side. We have Beth on LinkedIn asking about the impact that 3D printing and how it will be incorporated into construction. And then I'm going to double on that. We have Amy on LinkedIn who's asking, IKEA just introduced tiny homes into their catalog. Will that impact the construction industry?
Well, starting with the 3D printing, I believe that there's a very high chance that will come. It's still early. It's still fairly early in the concept. But I was watching, it was on YouTube, a video of a firm in Germany 3D printing a house. And the actual process itself was quite efficient. However, the setup costs were too high. So they need to solve that problem. If they can get the system to 3D print one house and then roll 10, 15, 20 meters down the road and print another one and almost set it up itself, then we'll really start to see some progress. However, in the short term, I still think it's a little while off, but it's got real prospects, and it would also open up all sorts of design options and that don't exist in an economic basis at the moment. So you could have, curved walls, domed ceilings. All of these things are possible now, but they're prohibitively expensive. But if you're 3D printing them, it could open a whole world of possibilities, which could be quite exciting and very, very different. Tiny homes is not a concept I've heard of, if I'm honest. I think, however, a lot of people have been held up or holed up in their houses for the last 12 months, and the thought of living in a smaller space rather than a larger one seems to me counterintuitive. Our experience, certainly here in Scotland, is that people are trying to move out of apartments. They want their own space. It doesn't need to be big necessarily, but they want to be able to sit out in their own private garden and get some daylight. They don't want to have somebody living above them or below them. So I'm not exactly sure what tiny homes are, but that doesn't resonate with me from what, if I'm understanding it correctly.
Absolutely. So then the next question we have is with many companies extending their work from home for employees indefinitely and anchor stores and shopping centers filing for bankruptcy, what will become of these large spaces? And Hugh, I may lean on you first.
Well, I was watching a recent call on YPO, and this subject came up, and it was a YPO called Dean Adler, and he went on to explain that a lot of the some of the retail spaces, the warehouse type retail space in the US, are being converted into distribution hubs for the likes of Amazon, and I could see that happening. So your your Home Depot or such like. If they are struggling, they may convert them. Shopping centres equally, there's going to be less of them, and if you have 3 or 4 in a city, it may be that it goes back to there only being 1 or 2, and those spaces that lose out, the less attractive ones, again will lead to redevelopment in some form, and these spaces, these areas will be repurposed into some other kind of use. And we're seeing that in a fashion here at the moment. We've even prior to the pandemic, Aberdeen is known as the oil capital of Europe, and so the oil price plays a huge part in the prosperity of the region. And with the oil price dropping 18 months ago, 2 years ago, there was a real drop in demand for office space, and some of these buildings have now been lying empty for a few years, and there's limited what's the word I'm looking for, relief from rates. So these buildings are costing the landlords a lot of money, and they're getting no income. And these landlords have taken to demolishing what would otherwise have been good quality office space just to avoid paying rates on them, and then having to look at repurposing the sites. And social housing and private residential properties seems to be the favour at the moment. But yeah, that adaptability and being willing to make big decisions is going to become increasingly important if real estate companies are going to survive, I would suggest.
Absolutely. And Anil, do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, look, this isn't a pandemic-related trend. This has been a trend for a long time. We've seen that we've seen this now since Amazon's been out. But one thing that we've seen with disruption in real estate is good real estate and good locations will prevail. And with the pandemic, if it was tough going in, it's going to be even tougher coming out of it, especially if you can be replaced with a few clicks online. So I do worry about weaker locations. But again, I think that was a pre-pandemic issue. I do overall think we'll see large space being filled. They can be, if they're good locations, they'll be repurposed to distribution warehouses, and hotels love being part of malls. And you'll also see smaller retailers collude to take over that big space. It's cheaper to take that space, and putting in groupings of smaller retail. We saw that with the food court, with high-end restaurants and food courts now, and how that's transitioned. So I go back to, if it's good real estate in a good location, it was good before the pandemic. I still think it's going to be good coming out of it.
Great, and that's a perfect segue into the next question we have. You spoke of good real estate in good locations. Real estate has always been an essential part of communities, of contributing to the tax base of a city, of contributing to the success of small businesses. How are the demands from communities going to be changed, whether it's tied to building codes or zoning or incentives from the communities coming out of COVID? And Hugh, do you want to take that first?
That's quite a difficult question, I would suggest, to answer. I touched on maybe a change of the desire of people to not live in built up or areas or cities and have more space. I think that the ability to work from home, and also the increase in connectivity and in the technology like Zoom and Teams, will allow more people, if they wish, to work from home. I think just the fact it's become an accepted way of doing things these days will also further exacerbate that. And we've seen people moving out of London and moving up into the north of Scotland, selling their £1.5 million apartment and buying a small, a farm or a country estate for less money, and being able to operate in a different way, in a different fashion altogether, and have a much better work-life balance. So that's one potential aspect of it, and that will obviously have an effect on blocks of apartments and in the viability of them going forward, which in turn could drive change in zoning and requirements. So I'm not exactly sure how to answer your question. That's certainly one way of it changing. I don't know if that's what you're looking for.
No, thank you, Hugh. And Anil, how do you think about it? I mean, hotels, as you mentioned, there's programming in the morning and there's programming at the bar late at night and conventions in between. Can you talk us through what hospitality, as it relates to being a platform or in a piece of the fabric of a community, looks like coming out of COVID?
Absolutely. It's critical, and cities can make a difference. We've seen special economic zones being created, which created a rise of certain countries. We're seeing renovation grants coming out. We're seeing street facade improvements because some cities, yes, they may not have as much money as before, but they're certainly encouraging change, and they want to gain some of the momentum. Everyone wants to look at the best ways to use their cash right now. We're all very conservative with their cash. When you layer on some cities that are giving cheaper government type debt or matching grants, that's usually the best way to deploy capital. Those cities that or communities that are able to do that for developers will gain momentum and continue to see growth. And hotels is usually a place they target to be able to help out. So because they've got so many visitors, anyone wanting to move to the community may be going and seeing family and friends and staying in hotels. So we're an entry point to many communities. We've seen all sorts of things. I mean, we're particularly impressed in Quebec. Quebec, as an example, is giving $5 million to those wanting to renovate at cheap forms of debt and only asking you to put in 20% of it for yourself. We're going to see a huge rise of improvements there and quality there, which will in turn bring in travel. We've seen Orlando in Florida work on street facade improvements. We've really seen all sorts of things. And as a result, in times like this, we have 5 hotels going into renovations in 2021, purely based on those government incentives that are coming in that have encouraged us that is the best place to use our cash right now.
That's spectacular. And Anil, another question that's come in from LinkedIn, Brittany wants to know, how will forced quarantine stays in hotels at the cost of the consumer affect hotel brand reputations? Will they be seen as a consumer-friendly or regulatory-friendly move?
Well, look, my perspective is anything that's forced by Big Brother is always seen as negative. So I'll start with that. I think hugely negative. I mean, if you're forced to stay in a hotel against your will, no matter what the hotel does or what service they can provide, which hasn't been very much, this is going to be a negative experience. And the challenge that the hotels that have signed up for this is they really are, would be at the end that they really need that cash, and they're willing to sacrifice that long-term reputation for a short-term gain. So I could understand why they're doing it. Things are very tough out there, but I do think there's absolutely some long-term pain, long-term negativity associated with it. I'm for non-forced quarantine business. I think that's when we're helping communities out. We're providing a service to the world. If somebody needs to get away from their family, there could be doctors, they could be nurses that have tested positive. They're willing to go self-isolate in a hotel, keeping the hotel staff safe with the right protocols. I'm completely for that. I think that's a good thing for the brand reputation. But I wouldn't be supportive for our organization to be in the forced quarantine environment today.
Certainly. So Hugh, you mentioned the Real Estate Network put on a conversation with Dean Adler last week, and he is the king of making not just bold predictions, but putting his money where his mouth is and looking really smart shortly thereafter. As we think about the real estate industry 5 years from now, and Hugh, we'll start with you, any bold predictions? A lot of us read the same periodicals and have similar conversations, but what are you thinking about? What are you planning for that the rest of the world is not?
Well, if I knew that, I wouldn't be telling you lot. The world, the changing landscape of the world, never mind in the real estate, is changing, and it's changing at an ever increasing pace. So making predictions is getting harder rather than easier. I think the need for flexibility, the ability to change direction quickly and adapt has always been important, but it's going to be vital and critical going forward. And it'll be interesting to see whether the length of leases are going to reduce because companies are no longer willing to commit to 5, 10, 15 or longer leases. And how will that affect the financing of these developments? And in some ways, that's going to involve higher risk for real estate, and it will make it more difficult for smaller companies such as mine to compete in that area. And we're already finding it harder to get finance and support from our traditional sources of bank finance. So it's going to be tougher. It's going to be tougher for guys like us, but then with that, there are opportunities for others. So it's, I'm not sure about a bold 5-year prediction, other than you're going to have to really be quick on your feet and be willing to make bigger decisions to make sure that your holding doesn't get affected detrimentally.
Spectacular. And Anil, what about yourself?
Yeah, it's a tough one, but certainly, we believe that second tier locations, so locations just outside of the city, you're going to see some more aggressive growth than they have in the past. We're all seeing it, major cities, people moving out further and further away, but I think they're still going to want to be able to be close to the cities in the future, and we're going to see some come back, but not all the way into cities. So we get excited about second tier suburban locations. Don't get me wrong, I think major cities like Toronto, New York, Chicago are still going to come back. You've just got to be a little bit more patient, because there's a lot of negativity around them that will inevitably turn around. We've just got to give it a little bit more time. People will take time to get back to the daily traffic jam and get into subways and get to get through public transportation. Right now, those don't sound like fun, but they are a natural part of our life. So we're focused on those second tier suburban locations and quite excited about them.
Great. And Anil, we have another question in from LinkedIn. Matthew Ofercook wants to know, what is your take on the rise of apart hotels and virtual hotels from the likes of Sonder and others?
Yeah, I can speak for hours on this one. So apart hotels are effectively, in a very commonly used term in Europe, in North America, we call them extended stay hotels. So they're effectively suites with kitchens in them. And wow, I tell you right now, they are doing phenomenal. Hotels are absolutely devastated, but any extended stay hotels are doing phenomenal. And it's seeing that business from construction crew, which is still traveling, quarantine type businesses, doctors and nurses that don't want to go home, and anyone building anything in the area. Lots of construction crews that can't go home because they are still gathering. There is a lot of business out there still gathering, but they want to go back at their hotel room. They want and isolate, and a kitchen is a necessity for that. So we've got a few extended stay and apart hotels. They're running extremely high occupancies, even higher than pre-pandemic levels. So I think that's going to continue. I think people are going to want the extra space in the suites, and they're going to want access to kitchens. A lot of people, it's still a fairly new trend. They've been out for a while, but the trend has actually been new. So I think a lot of people have become more wise to that. So I get quite excited about that asset class. I also like the repurposing ability of that asset class. And then in terms of virtual hotels for the like of Sonder, it's really hard to comment in a short time. I think that they have created demand in the industry. We've still seen growth, very high demand growth while they've been out. They've been an entry level for many customers wanting to travel that may have not been able to before. That is changing, and they really are competing with hotels more and more, especially as extended stay hotels are needed to come up. But I still am trying to understand their business model, and as they are required to pay the necessary taxes and registration fees similar to hotels, which is an inevitable evolution of those business, is that still as sustainable as it is today for people that are leasing out their homes, etc.
Certainly. So our last question is one of personal reflection on your journeys as industry leaders, as members of the larger YPO community that includes more than 30,000 members in 142 countries. What do you feel are the benefits of being a part of an organization like YPO, and what can it do for founders and entrepreneurs and business leaders like yourselves? Anil, actually, Hugh, I may lean on you first.
Well, YPO offered me a huge amount of support prior to the pandemic, but that's just been all the more important during these last 12 or so months. Clearly this pandemic is unprecedented, and we're finding ourselves having to deal with problems and issues that we've never faced before. So to be able to contact and converse with people of like mind and in similar positions has been a huge support for me. Sharing knowledge, sharing experience, and just knowing that there's other people out there facing similar type issues has been huge. And it's something that I've enjoyed. And although we've not been able to meet in person, there's been an awful lot of online content and communication virtually, and that's been great. Just to know it's there if you need it, and also to be able to support and help others. So no, it's been a huge support.
Wonderful. Anil, what about yourself?
Troy, I've been a YPO member for 10 years, and it's a real challenge not to commoditize this membership. It's very easy to make money through it, but that's not really been the primary purpose of it. The learning from a global perspective and seeing trends before they come out to the market is priceless. YPO's turned competitors into friends. It's given us access to deals and a much larger network, which sometimes includes a neighboring property that we bought, or somebody that we're looking to purchase their business. And right away, trust comes right out, and you're friends before you're doing business. And it's meant a lot to us as an organization and me personally, and excited to continue my journey in YPO and would encourage everyone to join.
Here.
Absolutely. Well, Hugh and Anil, thank you for joining us today, and to the thousands of you that have tuned in. If you've enjoyed this, please feel free to share it with your friends and followers and connections. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter and YouTube, so you can be the first to learn about our next episode. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, everyone.